Hey guys, before we get into the show, I just wanted to let you know I'm speaking at the Cross Border Summit in China around the Canton Fair period this coming April. I'll be speaking alongside world-renowned speakers that include Anthony Lee, Brian Johnson, Will Cherland and many, many more. So go grab a ticket at globalfromasia.com/Cross Border Summit. Hey guys, welcome back to Seller Sessions again. We bring in Gary for part 2 of the China Factory Nightmares. Today we're going to talk about, one is a chemical order and another we're going to be chatting about is a container full of rocks. So Gary, how are you?
I'm doing well. How's it going, Danny?
All good, all good. So yeah, I'm very intrigued by these two. So let's start with the chemical order. Again, it's in Brazil, you say?
Yes. So this was in my past life when I was working for a consulting firm, and then we were helping some Brazilian clients source chemicals from China. And a colleague of mine found one manufacturer on Alibaba for this type of chemical. And then this type of chemical, it was a type of powdered chemical. I don't know the specifics. I'm not a chemist, but it was basically, found on Alibaba. And my colleague, he looked at the site, it looked okay. And then he visited the site, in person.
Mm-hmm.
He went to the site, he met with the factory management there, and, he looked at the production line. It looked okay. But then he advised and then based on that, his due diligence in the site visit, he advised the client, it's safe to place a purchase order. And then that's what the client did.
Mm-hmm.
But then after production was finished, they wired the money, and then they waited, and then they waited, and then they waited some more. And then the factory, it disappeared. I mean, the place just shut down, and then everybody was gone AWOL.
Right, so before we go any further there, breaks down those steps, because obviously they've already done a site visit, haven't they? They've been to the factory, taken a look round, they've looked them in the eye, they've met them face to face, and they wired the money. Where was the money wired to? Was it to a bank account, or was it used like a third-party transfer service? How was it done? Do you know?
It was wired to a bank account.
Yeah.
It was wired to a bank account, but once the money is wired, it's very difficult to have recourse.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know the specific details of the bank account. It could have been a third party.
Yeah.
One best practice I always say is to make sure that the company name on your invoice matches the bank account, the company name on the bank account. Because if it doesn't, there's very little recourse that you can take.
Yeah, just taking a side glance to this, there's quite often that when you get samples from a factory, because they're low cost, I quite often see that, and I've done 3 sets of samples this week, but once you're a bit long in the tooth about it, is that you find that, it might be a personal email address from a factory. Some people see that as a red flag, but when you're spending 50 or 60 bucks, yes, it's a risk. You've kind of tried to build a relationship with these people, but that's kind of different to a larger order. So when you say that they wired the money, did they do 30 down and then the remaining balance of 70 as you normally would? Or was it they paid everything up front? Do you have any recollection of that?
Well, I believe that they had a down payment. It could have been 30 down and then 70 upon completion of the shipment.
Yeah.
But the thing is, they didn't arrange the inspection before releasing the payment.
Right.
So that's another key. You got to make sure you do some sort of inspection. If this is a new factory, if there's any doubts, going forward, you got to have a third party, a set of eyes to look at it before releasing the payment.
Yeah.
And just one other side note, I just remembered another story about, visiting a factory that I visited firsthand. I mean, sometimes what you see isn't necessarily what you get. I don't know, Danny, if you have a couple more minutes, can I add this bonus story for our...
Of course, yeah.
Okay. So another client was looking for a solar air conditioner.
Mm-hmm.
So this is like an electronic air conditioner that generates power from solar energy. Very, very limited number of manufacturers in China, probably just a handful. Yeah. One of our partners was able to identify one in Jiangsu province, and then we actually paid a visit to the factory. The alleged factory owner picked us up in a nice black Audi. Drove us, pick us up from the train station, drove us to the factory. He dropped us off, and then he went to go park. And then we went inside the factory, and then we waited for him. Looking back, this was actually a major red flag, because if this guy was really the factory boss, there's no way his parking spot would have been around the corner, right? Yeah. If he was the real boss, he would have like the prime parking spot right next to the front door. This just doesn't happen. You're not going to make the factory boss or Laoban, like walk around the block just to get into his factory. So this was the first red flag. The second red flag was we were looking for solar air conditioners. And then this factory, it was very big, very sophisticated, but they were only manufacturing electric air conditioners, just, the typical run-of-the-mill model. And then, so I asked the owner, or the alleged owner, so where are the solar air conditioners? And then his excuse was, we have a big order of electric air conditioners, but the solar ones, they're over there. I'll show you them later. Mm-hmm. So, we went out of the main, factory hall with the equipment, and then it was kind of like a side area. And then there was one unit of the solar air conditioner that, that they sent us, the quotations for. And then to me, it just, the pieces of the puzzle just didn't add up. If you really are manufacturing what you claim to be manufacturing, I got to see the production line. I got to see the raw materials of, the solar collectors. I got to see people assembling this, right? Yeah. So this was the second red flag that went off in my head. And then the last red flag was when we went into the office and then we went to the showroom. Okay, so we walked by, all the staff, all the salespeople, on their computers and everything, and then not one person acknowledged the factory boss. Before we went to the showroom. Looking back, this was a third red flag, because in Chinese factories, like the factory boss is like the emperor. He's the king, he's the judge, jury, and executioner. And then if all the workers, nobody acknowledged him, there's something fishy going on here, right? So. Okay. Just putting all of the pieces together. And then the final piece of the puzzle was in the sample showroom. I see this a lot of times, and I just want to make sure, our audience doesn't get duped, if stuff like this happens. Sometimes, what you see in the showroom, it was maybe 90% electric air conditioners. And then there was one unit there that was a solar air conditioner. Yeah. I've talked to a lot of factories, and the stuff they put in the showrooms, it's not necessarily stuff that they're making. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's stuff that they could make. The definition of manufacturing is quite liberal in China. It could be a cultural difference. I don't know. But even if you do see it in the showroom, it doesn't mean that they make it. Some unscrupulous suppliers, they actually will take potential client samples that the people will send to the factory and then claim them as their own. I've seen stuff like this happen before. So, putting together the pieces of the puzzle, the parking space, the production line without the product, lack of acknowledgement of the factory owner by the staff, and then finally the showroom, we were able to make the conclusion that this guy was not the factory owner. He was a middleman posing as the factory owner. And
I think they call it, it's like when scam artists, they hide in plain sight. So the scam is so big and so played out and so public that it's an audacity that they attempt it, but they do, and that's the irony of it. So it's completely open scam. Yeah. You're exactly right, Danny. I mean, it's plain out. It's plain in the open, and you kind of let your guard down. Like you would think like he doesn't have the like the balls to do something like that, right? Of course.
But if you put all the pieces together, it just doesn't add up.
Without a doubt. So that's a very interesting one. I know we kind of so that's the second one. Let's talk about the rocks. I think this is a good one as well. Talk us about the container of rocks.
Okay, this is kind of like the anecdotal, you got to do your proper due diligence on your supplier. Basically, the foreign client, they place an order, from the Chinese supplier. They sent the payment, and then, they just use one metric to evaluate whether the product added up. They just took the weight measurement of the container. They just made sure that it weighed about right. It weighed right at the weigh station before it was loaded onto the ship. But after it arrived, they opened up and it was just a container of rocks.
Yeah.
You know, like literally they shipped a container of rocks. So, I mean, stuff like this, it's, you know, it happened in the past and it continues to happen today. And then I'm sure, you know, it's going to happen in the future. I mean, it's not just, you know, China, but this could happen anywhere, you know, as people are going into Southeast Asia, you know, India, stuff like this. You know, you really have to do your proper due diligence on both the supplier and also, you know, you have to do some sort of inspection before releasing your payment. Otherwise, you know, you could get a container of rocks.
So yeah, big lesson learned. I mean, I think it's crazy that people can get away with sending rocks in this day and age, but you're literally skipping every stage there, aren't you? I mean, you're going through serious levels of trust.
Right.
So yeah, imagine if that goes into Amazon. Amazon are not peeking inside the box. It's in, it's out of packaging, etc. Amazon's just going to send it out to customers. Customers are going to get that and they're going to hit the roof, aren't they? Because that's going to be...
Yeah, and then that's when the negative reviews come in, and then that's when you really feel the pain.
Yeah, totally. So no, very, very much interesting there. So, okay, so let's wrap that there. What's the best way for people to reach you?
Right. So my site, 8020sourcing.com. I work with a lot of online sellers to help them scale their businesses, you know, reach 7 figures. And then I put together a negotiations guide, you know, as you're, you know, negotiating with your suppliers for our viewers. If they visit www.8020sourcing.com/seller sessions, they can get the free download of the negotiations guide, so it can help them, you know, maybe save some time and money going forward.
Fantastic. Gary, again, thank you for coming in today. Guys, thank you for your ears. Don't forget to subscribe and we'll see you again soon.